to be added to the introduction. Also, there's all this additional information. If you don't have all of this information in your current introduction, what is the problem? In a broad sense, what is your particular topic that you're interested in? Why are you interested in discussing that topic? Why is it important as criminologists and criminal justice professionals to take that topic up? If that kind of information is not currently in your introduction, it needs to be added. So that's the introduction. Why is this important? What is my topic? What is the big, broad issue? How did I approach this? I approached this by finding articles that deal with this particular topic. This is how I found those articles. Please, again, provide enough details so that folks could follow your recipe and get the same exact set of articles. Here were the directions that were posted. You needed at least 4 scholarly resources. You needed to have some sort of theoretical perspective. You needed a clear statement about what the research question or topic is going to be in the literature review, and you needed to use APA formatting. Again, this part has been completed. Your draft of it was completed on March 17th. All you have to do now is go in and address any deficiencies and add that methodological component to the very end of the introduction. Part 2 is the literature review. This is what you have been working on for the last few days. What I asked for was a list of the articles that you plan to use for your literature review section. I'm going to go through those today in just a few minutes and make sure that they line up, that they're scholarly, that they should be used for your literature review. I will let you know in the feedback section on gradebook, in the gradebook, whether or not there are any issues. In that set of directions, when I asked for the draft of the literature review section, I indicated that that needed to be somewhere between 3 to 5 pages. And this is where I think most of the confusion has come in. So for the draft, a draft is just a draft. I wanted you guys to get started. I wanted you to find your articles, and I wanted you to get something down on paper, because I don't like getting hit with a 15-page paper the last week of classes. So I've been trying to piecemeal this out so that you have something to build on. You have an introduction to build on. You have the start of your literature review section to build on. And now we're going to grow that into a full, complete literature review product. For the full, complete literature review product, you need 6 to 9 pages to cover your literature. So initially, for the draft, the requirement was 3 to 5 pages. For the final product, it needs to be 6 to 9 pages. Apologies if that caused anybody any kind of confusion or any kind of stress. That wasn't my intent. I'm sorry that it got kind of confusing there, but let me clarify one more time. For the draft that you should have already turned in, I was asking you for 3 to 5 pages. That was just a draft. Now, for the final product, which you should be working on, you need to expand that and grow that to 6 to 9 pages. So I've given you all the components of a literature review, exactly what I'm expecting here. Introduction to the literature review. This should be a page or less. Review of the literature, 6 to 9 pages long. It needs to include your 10 to 12 academic sources. Please be careful here. One of the things that I see is that folks will find a book or a really good article and they really just rely on that 1 or 2 source, and then they cite information from those articles as opposed to going and getting those articles and reading through them. Please don't do that, because it will show up on Turnitin and I will be able to tell that you didn't actually use 10 to 12 sources. What you used was 1 or 2, and that will result in a 0. So don't do that, and do not use quotations at all. It tends to get super messy. The citations never really work out the way that they're supposed to, and I want to hear your voice. I don't want to hear another author's voice. I want to hear what you have to say. So summarize this material in your own words and cite it as needed in accordance with APA format. The due dates. We're going to go through those in just a minute, but let me get through the other parts of your literature review. Part 3 is, your critical assessment. Critical assessment is not criticism in the general sense of the word. I don't want you to like rip the paper apart. Critical analysis is when you think about is this body of work, is there quality to it? How much of it do I see? Do I see studies that give me the same results? Do I see studies that are really, the results are all over the board? Do they cover all the topics that exist, all the issues that exist within the topic? You do have that skill set to make those kinds of judgments, whether or not this is good research or it's bad research. And so I want you to talk about whether other people have done good, reliable, valid research on this topic, and also to identify where are the gaps, where are the problems, where are the challenges in researching this particular area, because there are always challenges and there are always gaps, and there are strengths. So hit on those too. I'm not asking you to go negative. I'm asking you to look at a body of work and say, there are some deficiencies here. Here are the strengths. There's some avenues of research that they have not pursued yet and are really important to understanding this particular issue. So that's your critical assessment. And then the final part is your conclusion. So again, you have your 5 basic parts. You have your abstract, that's number 1. You have your literature review, that's number 2. Number 3 is your critical assessment, and number 4 is your conclusion. The final component is for you to have your references list. So let's talk about the due dates. Let me scroll back up here. So the due dates. The draft literature review introduction was due on March 17th. It was worth 100 points. Everyone who has submitted one has gotten feedback. Those grades are in. The only thing that you need to do from here forward is to address any deficiencies and to add that method section that we talked about. Second, the list of articles for your literature review. This was due on April 14th. It is worth 25 points. I wanted a list of the 10 to 12 articles that you are going to be using for your final literature review product. I will look over that. It's a cursory review for me to make sure that the sources are scholarly and that they're also on topic. The draft literature review, again, this is just one of 5 sections of the paper. It was due yesterday. I understand that there were a couple issues with the Dropbox, so that I have fixed those and you can go in and submit them. The Dropbox, I have created a new one for your class. It's called the Final Product Dropbox. The draft literature review Dropbox has been moved to that content folder so that everything is in one place. If you previously submitted it, it's not a problem. It's still there. I just moved it into that module so everyone had a common place to go to upload all of their products. I understand that there were some issues with people trying to get the materials turned in last night, so I have extended that deadline. I cannot take products via email because this has to go through Turnitin, and I can't do that for you. So I will be submitting that in the announcement today so that you understand that if you didn't get it in and you tried to email it to me, you need to go back and put it into that Dropbox. The full complete draft of the literature review is due on April 28th by 11:59 p.m. It is worth 200 points. This includes your abstract, your introduction, your literature review, your critical assessment, your discussion conclusion, as well as your reference list. It needs to be in APA format. You will get feedback from me on the full draft, and you will get that feedback by May 1st. You will have a week to make revisions and get those back to me by May 8th at 11:59 p.m. The final revised draft of your literature review is worth 100 points. A couple of additional notes that I need to go through. late assignments will not be accepted for the final product. It has to be turned in on time. If you don't get it in on time, then I don't have enough time to give you quality feedback. And these papers do take, on average, a couple of hours each for me to go through and provide the kind of feedback that you need to get your product to the best place it can possibly be. So no late assignments. All assignments have a new Dropbox for each component listed below, unless they have already been submitted. So the introduction to the literature review, I didn't move that out of its current location. I left it where it was. I did, however, move the draft literature review. I moved it into that new content folder called the final product Dropbox. So it is in there. All I did was move it. So if you submitted it, it's still there. Don't worry, it did not disappear. All papers must be submitted through Turnitin. I cannot accept products via email. Any product with an originality score of 30% or more will not be accepted. So when you submit a paper through Turnitin, it's going to give you an originality score. If that score is over 30%, what that means is that 30% of what's in your paper comes from another source, word for word. That source may be one of your own papers. This may sound a little crazy, but if you have written a paper on, say, prison reform, and you use a piece of it, and you do not cite yourself, then that counts against you. Additionally, if you have written a paper for another class and you're incorporating some of those materials into this final product, you need permission from that instructor or faculty member to do so. I don't have a problem with it. If you wrote it, it's your work, you should be able to use it. Now, obviously, you can't take a paper you wrote for another class and then turn it in for this one. That's, double dipping. You can't do that. But if there are sections of a paper that you have already written that apply to this, I don't have a problem with you including that. But you do need to cite yourself, because if you do not cite yourself, it will drive up your originality score. It'll show that material is coming from somewhere else. It may be coming from you directly because you wrote it, but it's still going to pick it up. It's going to drive your score up over 30%. So please make sure that you cite yourself. All of this has been set up through Turnitin, and I took every step I could to minimize the scores. That includes, it does not look at the reference list, so those won't count against you. I also excluded short matches, like 2 or 3 words in sequence. So oftentimes it'll pick up something like, so you will not. And then that increases your originality score. So I excluded that possibility. If you have any more questions about the final product or the due dates, please do let me know. Call me, email me. If there's something that is still confusing, now is the time for us to address it. We've got a couple more weeks, and I want this process to go smoothly for you, which is again why I tried to piece it out so that it wasn't all of a sudden, write this introduction, write this literature review, do this critical assessment, so you have good materials to build on. So we've gone through the basic parts, the abstract, the introduction, the literature review itself, as well as the critical assessment and the conclusion. So let's talk about, for a few minutes, how I want this structured. Do not deviate from this structure. You can put this into APA format, but failure to follow this template will result in me giving you back the paper without a grade, and I will not review it. Here's why. People will Google templates for APA format, and everybody will use a different one. Sometimes those templates are in an old version of an APA format, or people don't use APA format at all. So I'm giving you exactly what I want this paper to look like. You need a title page. This is your first page. You need your name, institution, course, date, and any other APA required elements. That's all that goes on the first page. Typically, the first page does not have a number on it. Now, unless you've got some kind of fancy Microsoft skills, you may not know exactly how to do that to keep it from putting the page number on the first page. So let me just show you real quick. So you can go to insert. Now, of course, I thought it would be easy to find. Insert. Come on, where is my? It's up here. Insert. If you go to insert page numbers, you just uncheck this box where it says show number on first page. Take that off because you do not want a number on the title page. And then you go to format, and you want it to start at 0. So you put in the number 0, and then you hit OK. And this is what's going to happen. It'll actually do this to this paper. So as you can see, my first page, it doesn't have a page number because I asked it to start at 0. If I hadn't asked it to start at 0, it would start at 1, and then the real first page of my paper would be page number 2 as opposed to page number 1. So let me walk you through that one more time. So if you want to put in your numbers, you just hit insert, page numbers. You want to make sure this box here is unchecked. You do not want a page number on your first page. Hit format. You want this to start at 0 so that the real first page of text in your paper is page 1, not the title page. And then you hit OK. Now close this all out. Let me see if there's anything else in here that we need to cover. The structure, again, please don't deviate. Do this exactly the way that I have asked for it. Title page, no page number on it, just these required elements. Your abstract is one page, is on a separate page, it is one paragraph. An abstract is just a really short, concise introduction for the reader on the topic, why it's important, what the general findings were, and how do we move this body of work forward. Your introduction should be 1 to 2.5 pages. It's best to start broad. So if you're talking about police use of deadly force, you may want to start with a broader conversation about the relationship between citizens and law enforcement currently in the United States. And then you want to funnel down or narrow down to your specific study topic. You also need to include a short description of your methods. Yes, literature reviews do have methodological criteria. So you need to talk about what search engines you use to find your articles. If you use Google Scholar, that's fine. If you use stuff through Tarleton Library, that's fine. You need to talk about the search terms that you employ to get the articles. Sometimes a reference list review, that's where you get an article and you're like, this is exactly the kind of research I'm talking about. Well, go to their references and look through the references because there'll be half a dozen other articles there that you probably should be looking at. Sometimes people contact the authors to find out if they have additional work. I don't expect you to do that, but I do need to know how you came up with your 10 to 12 articles so that someone else could go do the same. Your literature review, this is 6 to 9 pages. You needed one opening paragraph, maybe 2, that talks a little bit about the big picture of your topic. And then each element, core element of your body of research needs to be discussed. As it says earlier in the instructions, a literature review is not a line-by-line discussion of each article. You don't say, Article 1 by so-and-so and so-and-so said this and did that and found this. And then Article 2 by so-and-so and so-and-so did this and found this. And Article 3 and Article 4 and Article 5 and Article 6 and on down the list. You need to somehow group those articles by some common characteristic. And I've given you examples. So if we're talking about police use of force, perhaps the first element that you address in your literature review are studies that deal with use of force, policy, and procedure. The second section may deal with the public's perception of use of force. So you're thematically organizing your literature. You're not just Article 1, Article 2, Article 3, Article 4. So find that common theme and then organize and structure your literature review around those themes, not individual articles. Here I've just said subsection, but subsection should be replaced with your specific subsection title. For example, subsection 5 from above would be labeled Police Oversight Committees. It wouldn't say subsection 5, it would say Police Oversight Committees. Critical assessment, this is 1 to 3 pages. I want you to provide a summary of the core elements covered in the literature review. These are the thematic issues that you covered. Talk about them a little bit. You know, this is going to be a paragraph or two. It's sort of summarizing things, wrapping it up. And then you want to talk about, again, the strengths of the research, the growth areas for the research topics, and then specific suggestions for new research studies based on your review. So these are 3 general sections. You can have a 4th or a 5th or a 6th if you feel like there's more that you need to discuss. And as noted above, subsection should be replaced with your specific title. For example, subsection 1 would be Strength of Police Use of Force Literature. Your conclusion should be about a page. Your references, this is as many pages as it takes to list all the sources in your paper. Your references must be in APA format and include every source listed in the paper. Do not, as I mentioned earlier, please do not use 1 or 2 seminal articles or books and then cite parts from that that include other articles as if you've collected those articles and read them. This will pop on Turnitin. It will tell me that there were really only 2 sources used, not 10 to 12. So if you go that route, and I can only strongly encourage you not to do that, you will get a 0 for the paper. I've also given you my Bontrager writing guide that has a bunch of common issues that people run into and how to correct them. And then finally, there are some links for you here that have to do with writing literature reviews and how to write and common mistakes and how to write in an academic voice as opposed to the first person voice. So we've gone over the instructions. I hope I have clarified any confusion that you may have. Again, here are all of your due dates. Your draft literature review, this was not a typo. It needed to be 3 to 5 pages. It was just a draft. The full literature review section of your final product, one more time, should be about 6 to 9 pages. So I hope that clarifies everything. I hope that I've answered a bunch of questions. If I haven't, please reach out to me. I don't want to hold you all up in terms of getting your product done. I want you to be able to get it done quickly. So if there are any further questions, any kind of confusion, call me. You all have my number. My phone number is 850-212-0675. Call me and we will talk through it. Because if you're still confused and you still have some questions, chances are your colleagues do too, and I do not want this to be confusing. I mean, obviously writing a paper takes some brain power. It's not the easiest thing to do. I can't make that any easier, but I can try to make this process as simple and as straightforward as possible. So if I have not accomplished that, let me know. I will fix it. So I appreciate you all emailing me and letting me know, like, oh, I'm really kind of confused here. I don't know what's happening. I do appreciate that, and I appreciate your time going through this with me. And I hope I got to all the questions. If I didn't, email me today or call me so that I can get this fixed for you all. All right, have a great day.